It looks good from here. Do you have a...
Sorry, I'll get a message if it's not.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Vicky.
Thank you. Thank you.
Catherine Reynolds.
How are you?
Hi, Vicky. Yeah, all good.
And then they try and inveigle me into doing things like helping with the locking up and everything else.
Did you meet them?
Yeah, well, who's the person who runs the business?
Dave Garner.
Dave, yeah, I know Dave. Dave's
Yeah.
a neighbour of mine further down the road.
Okay, good evening, members, town clerk. Welcome to this meeting of the Human Resources Committee. Today, the 8th of April. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence received.
We've got apologies from Councillor Marie, he has a work commitment.
Thank you. Second item is declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Any declarations? No. Thank you. Next item is the minutes. That's the minutes, attachment 3, to receive and approve the minutes of the HR committee held on Wednesday, the 7th of January. Consider any matters arising not covered elsewhere in this agenda. Does everyone have access to the minutes?
Yeah.
Propose that we accept them.
Does anyone have any comments or matters arising? Happy. Councillor Black proposes, Councillor Shrewker seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
I see I haven't put my, will you initial that one? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then to sign that one. Thank you. I'll do that.
8/4/26. Okay, so the minutes are signed. Next item is public participation, 20-minute session. For members of the public to make representations. Do we have any requests? Next item is attachment 5, which is the caretaker security officer. This is a report from the property manager setting out a strategy for recruitment of a property manager.
No, maintenance.
Maintenance.
Sorry,
Property maintenance.
property maintenance officer.
Yeah.
Do we have any comments on the report? Do you wish to say anything, Town Clerk, about it?
Not particularly. I think finding, we hoped that we'd found a dual person, but it didn't prove that it was possible to find that. And I think this is Julian looking for the easiest aspect of the job that it's able to recruit for, and then we can outsource the security stuff on an ad hoc basis. I think it's the rough basis.
Right, any comments, Councillor Black?
Yeah, if we look at the person specification, I just would make one suggestion. I'm right at the end, it's essential and desirable. I'm a little bit surprised that we put basic knowledge of health and safety in maintenance environments in the desirable rather than the essential.
Well, they will have to be trained.
In specifics there, but they would, you would hope that they've got some basic knowledge in the first place.
Okay.
But I mean, if people disagree, by all means, but I just thought that there's so much there. And one of the reasons why caretakers weren't able to do it, because they didn't really have the full understanding of some of the issues.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my suggestion. But
Just a question, is any of the role likely to extend beyond the Guildhall, like with other properties, or is it just
I think yes.
potentially?
Yes.
That makes sense, doesn't
I think flexibility is
Yeah.
very much key feature.
Councillor Breen?
The report says there will be no additional cost against the budget. It would be, does that mean there's going to be a saving? I can't envisage the budget will drop exactly on the existing, so I think it would be prudent to rework the budget if this if this is accepted.
Reasonable. Because we've got other considerations, haven't we, this evening?
I think that it was felt that because there'd be 5 fewer hours a week, that would provide a little bit of a gap, basically, that perhaps could then be used because, you know, you can't, it's all very well the idea of a handyman, but they can't do plumbing, they can't do electrics, all those things have to be certificated. So that would probably be used for trades, as trades are needed when something leaks or breaks. So I think that's where he was with that. So it would be used for bodies, but yeah, trades, basically.
It shouldn't be too difficult to do a calculation of the current costs versus what the new costs will be. I wouldn't have thought that it's not an onerous.
I think it's 5 hours less a week, so it's not.
If it's as simple as that, then
Let's see.
yeah, crack on.
Okay,
At the same pay rate, sorry, I'm just sort of working it through my own time. At the same pay rate, 5 hours less cost. You know what I'm saying? Because the report doesn't make it as explicit as that, does it?
Why don't we ask John to do it?
The clerk, is that, if I'm understanding you correctly, is saying that any savings would be redeployed to buy-in services. So, you know, it all sounds very good. I'd just like to see it on paper, wearing my finance hat.
Yes, it shouldn't stop making a decision to support it, I don't think, but it would be good as an action to have that validated. Probably into the finance committee itself, maybe, I don't know.
Correct, yeah.
sorry, so what do you want? You want the financial cost savings?
No, I want the budget reworking. We've got a very clear HR budget. And in many respects, we should be reviewing the HR budget, say, quarterly at this meeting.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking for, if we're making changes to bringing in, you know, different people or making adjustments to pay scales, as a matter of good practice, the budget should be reworked so that we clearly understand the implications.
So I think the point is, Town Clerk, is that you would typically take an impact analysis against the budget, present what the new figures would be, but that would be sensible for the finance committee to have that at its next meeting.
And that might be challenging because I've got it picked up by Friday.
The one after.
So this is the recommendation of the property manager. Recommendation is to approve the introduction of a part-time property management assistant, maintenance assistant, based on 15 hours a week. To approve the reallocation of hours as outlined in the table above. So Adrian, to increase from 20 to 25 hours a week. Are you happy to accept those recommendations?
Yes.
Anyone wish to propose that?
I'm happy to propose.
Councillor Black, second. All those in favour?
Yep.
So, yeah, let's go along with this and see how it goes.
So Councillor Green is proposing increasing Adrian
Councillor
Black.
Second.
Okay.
So taking that, both of those together, that's agreed, okay?
Yep.
So the next item is the museum manager. Members to receive a report from the town clerk regarding the appointment of a museum manager. And museum manager's been in post now for what, 4 or 5 weeks?
A couple of weeks.
3 weeks.
Three
3 weeks.
3 weeks, is it? Okay.
Three this week, weren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very sympathetic to this. I've always said that I think it's not right that we should require any employee to work every single weekend. But I do think this is probably a premature report because the manager's only been in post a few weeks. We really perhaps ought to tie this up with 3-month or 6-month probation. And
She's on
Yeah.
a fixed term contract.
Yeah, that's,
give more consideration to this. I don't know what other people think.
so we advertised it as a fixed term contract with a view to potentially becoming permanent. We advertised the hours that it entailed. I think it would be unwise within the fixed term contract periods to start shuffling around hours and days. What we should do, I think, is declare an intention that should it move to a permanent basis, that as part of that crossover, we would consider and look sympathetically towards varying the hours. That would be my personal view, because 3 weeks in, based on a fixed term contract, I think changing weekends and stuff is really against what the whole point about. We wanted somebody in quick to carry on with the service.
Councillor Pratt?
This was a fixed term contract for 6 months.
Yep.
The lady has a young family. Yes, she went into the job knowing that this involved weekends.
Mhm.
I would have thought that we should know within 3 months if it's going to work or not. And I wonder whether we should take this, formal review this at the end of 3 months, with the view, if everything is working well, to make it an open-ended appointment, and at the same time look at the hours, because I think it's a long-term situation. She's got a young child. Yes, she went in with her eyes open, but we should actually try to be sympathetic to that where we can. Yes, we have a fixed-term contract. Let's see how that works first of all, and then I suggest that we review it after 3 months, and we can then make a decision: do we carry on for another 3 months? Because if we don't know after 3 months, there's something wrong with our system.
Councillor Breen?
I've kind of got a different view on all of this, and it says in the report that you feel the hours are unsustainable.
Well, I mean, she came to me and said, you know, Easter weekend, 4-day weekend.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I just said, yeah, you can have Easter Sunday, and she's coming in on a Tuesday. Because otherwise, you know, she's not going to spend Easter Sunday with her young son. That's miserable. So I mean, the main point of the report is, you know, we can, you know, she can request changes to her hours and contract, but really was to ask if you could, if you're okay for me to sort of talk to her. And, you know, I think she's very conscious that she wants to be here at the weekend when the museum is busy and it's the beginning of her contract, and she wants to do it properly. But, you know, we've got to have a bit of flex in the system, really, and that's all really that I was asking for at this point.
That's
I'm
all.
completely sympathetic to that.
Sorry, that's how I read it and interpreted it. Some
Yeah.
flexibility, not kind of, and
Yeah.
some discretion. And to me, that sounds reasonable.
For me, she's an employee. This is a legal process. The way it works, as far as I understand, is if she makes a formal request, you should acknowledge that request, and then you should have a consultation with her to find out the fine details of it. Then the legal process is that we would do an assessment of the request. We would analyse the business impact. Who's going to lock up on and open up on a Monday, or sorry, on a Saturday and a Sunday? You know, we've got a lot of valuable items in the museum. Is there going to be somebody else from the staff who's going to take on the role? Is it going to be detrimental? Because I think one of the key things, the role for the museum manager, is to be familiar with the volunteers who are coming in to man the museum. So there's a formal process to go through here, and we as an employer should go through that. The report says quite clearly that a robust process has been gone through, and the hours were advertised, and it was clear, very clear, that the work involved Saturday and Sunday, and we understand that there was a lot of applicants for it, and if the hours don't suit the lady, and I've got a granddaughter, and I know the difficulties with kind of child minding, and I'm very sympathetic to it, but if it doesn't suit, if the hours don't suit, the hours don't suit, and we as a council shouldn't be involved, and as an employer, shouldn't be involved in any additional costs, or, you know, kind of have issues that impact the operation of the museum so early on. But she does have a legal right from day one to make a formal request for a change in her work shift.
So,
Councillor Brown.
a couple of observations. That would need to be validated in terms of fixed term contracts. That'd be the first thing, because I can't say that I am knowledgeable enough about the distinction between a fixed term contract and not. So I think that has to be established. Secondly, I don't think we should be less than fair and equitable in how we treat a member of staff, and therefore we should be clear about the guidelines, and you've already referred to them, which is a job advert which clearly sets it out. Then, if I take it down to a very practical level, only on Sunday, I got a phone call because they couldn't get in. Okay? Whilst we had a gap with a museum manager, I had, on 2 occasions, phone calls because people had my phone number. I'm not the right person because I don't have any keys, as I shouldn't. My personal view is that I think we need a bit of stability for the volunteers, because it's not just about the museum manager. The volunteers did feel worried about rotas, because I had them come to me, who to speak to on Sunday. Apologies coming to you, but don't know who else to speak to. When I'm thinking, actually, you've got a museum manager in post. Maybe it was just a culmination of circumstances because of Easter and everything, but for me, I feel we need a period of stability, bed the new museum manager in, with the intention to look at the working pattern should we move it to permanent. And that could be from the 3-month point onwards, because it will take time. It might need a consultation. It might need something else. It will need a council decision, because I don't think we can just ad hoc say, and I know the reasons why you might have gone coming on a Tuesday, but it's not a day that the museum opens. So we have to collectively decide what's the right way to meet the needs of an individual who, for me, is very impressive, and I think will only be an added value to the museum and the council and STBF. But we also have to recognise that there's councillors and also particularly there's volunteers. So that's just my personal view.
And sorry, and finally, the contract hours is 37.5 hours. On a Saturday and Sunday, it's my understanding the museum is only open for 6 hours.
Yeah.
You know, we're not chasing her to be here, you know, 45 minutes ahead and 45 minutes after to make up the extra hour and a half.
Yeah.
Councillor Green. The black,
I just wonder, I thought when I was volunteering, it may have changed then, but actually the museum manager didn't lock up, it was the caretaking staff that locked up. They open up and lock up. So with all respect, Councillor Green, I understand the point you're making, but I think actually if there has been a glitch, it's maybe more to do with the caretaking arrangements. But anyway, I think though that I would certainly push for having a review at 3 months. Yes, we need to have some period of stability, but I think we also need a little bit of flexibility. Yes, you can say I walk into the job knowing exactly what it is, and that's a little bit different from not knowing at all what it was and suddenly finding out. But I do think I think we've got a very good person, and while we had 17 applicants, to be honest, there were only 2 people in my book that were anywhere near good enough, and there was very hard to distinguish between them. So I would seek to move to the maximum flexibility by the town clerk, and obviously you're the line manager, and do that, because I think she's done a tremendous job picking up, I don't think we realised quite what the state of the museum was. I think it's been a little bit worse than we had imagined, because I've been in to see her a couple of times, and she's doing her very best. I think she's extremely good, but we just need to be a little bit flexible where we can be, without breaching the fundamentals of a contract.
And that's my point again, we have to do it in a way that is so if, for example, we just said, oh, after 3 months, brilliant, let's make it permanent, and that actually doesn't adhere to someone on a fixed, so we need to just make sure that we've got all the right ducks in a row, because if not, somebody from outside will say, you have not complied with X, Y, and Z. So as long as we do it in compliance with the appropriate
By agreement, though,
laws,
in contract law, by agreement,
Yeah.
you can agree to terminate one contract and move it to another contract, right? And that, provided that's a mutual arrangement. So the fact it's fixed term, that your circumstances change, you, the employer, now see advantage in changing it, the employee sees advantage in changing. So that is not a fundamental problem. It becomes a problem where one group is desperate to change it and the other group say, no way. We're not in that situation. So I do think, let's be as flexible as we can. I really think we should move to a very thorough review of the 3-month period. We do need stability at the moment, because obviously she's new there. Some of the volunteers are still finding their feet with her. But that would be my suggestion.
I think the bigger, as I said at the beginning, I've always been sympathetic to this. I don't think we should require any employee to work every weekend, especially Easter weekends and Christmas holidays and so on. The bigger picture, as far as I'm concerned, is the whole issue about the museum, about the visitor information, about making it a 7-day-a-week operation, providing the hive as part of the offer. And that would allow the museum manager not to have to work weekends, and obviously recruiting many more volunteers. Because I think the fact that we got 17 applicants, many from young people, indicates to me that there is an appetite out there for volunteering among a younger generation, but it just needs the museum manager to go out and recruit those people. What the report is saying, I mean, I can accept that we advertise this job as weekend working. The museum manager went into the job knowing that eyes wide open, but as a good employer, I think we need to be sympathetic to the personal circumstances of any employee. What the town clerk is asking here is that she, based on what they used to call the exigencies of the service, i.e. providing a good service, can adapt and adjust the working hours of any employee based on their personal circumstances, pending I would argue, a 3-month review. And that at the 3 months, we have a proper review, see how it's going, and make adjustments, formal adjustments at that stage.
It may not be even required. This is not her requesting this. This was me putting this report in. So she she asked about Easter Sunday. I couldn't, in all heart, say no. We must be here. That would just be, not a good employer, basically. So. I did not the message I wanted to send at all. So it's more about allowing, about having the flexibility prior to a review, whenever the council or the committee decides that it's appropriate, just, having a little bit of wiggle room, really.
Yeah.
So my personal view is I would take a slightly different approach. We should have a review that you will undertake with the museum manager at a point, it may be 3 months, to discuss the working pattern. And that's given enough time for the individual who's an employee to reflect on how it's impacting their perspective. But you, with the museum manager, must take account of the fact the operation as it stands, it opens all weekends. There are volunteers who go in there that have voiced some concerns about the disruption that's been caused by the ex-museum manager leaving, the gap, and then the new museum manager. We have to, and it's important, we are volunteers based, we have to protect them as well. So I'm just being very cautious about The new museum manager needs to declare what it is that they would like, and then that needs to be considered rather than it being, without our knowledge, then we then get complaints from volunteers about that they can never, in worst case scenario, can never contact the museum manager, or they're never in the museum. I'm just sort of thinking it through sensibly.
Wouldn't, if she asked for that permission, I would say no.
No, yeah, I don't know what she's going to ask for, so.
So,
I mean, I think we
In this.
I think we have to entrust the town clerk
Yeah,
to,
I agree.
to manage the service we provide.
Yeah.
There's a danger we get too involved in the detail. Your responsibility is to make sure the museum is open and closed 10 o'clock till 4 o'clock every weekend. If we then receive complaints, then we obviously have to do something, but if not, then we're assuming it's working and that people are opening up and closing it down and volunteers know what they're doing.
I just have one last point, it's not related to this, but I think it'd be useful to have a discussion pretty soon with her about the number of people wanting access to the archives. This seems to be a major problem. A lot of people have been pushing, and I think she felt under a lot of pressure.
She did.
And
And I've spoken to her about it, and I think she needs breathing space. 3 weeks in, she needs time to assimilate and understand the challenge. She has already said to me she will work through proposals, and that's why the Museum and Archives Committee will not meet until June.
Yeah.
Because she needs time.
Yes.
And that when we meet, she will come with proposals around access to archives. She understands the value of access.
yes, of course.
But just becoming a hostage to fortune, because there's a lot of noise around this, it's unfair to expect her to respond in just like that. It really is.
And yes, I think there may need to be a little bit of quiet words in here saying, hang on a minute, back it up. We said there were two people who really need it urgently for Mary 800 and the blue plaques. The others did not raise many issues like that, but I understand that even one or two councillors have been pushing hard. So,
Okay,
I think
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, just finally, I agree with your position, Councillor Wise. I think that if she was to take annual leave, it's likely she would be absent as a weekend. You know, there's going to have to be provisions which is not available. I also think the degree of disquiet from volunteers, I don't know the circumstances, but I think it's probably a little bit inevitable with change. There's always going to be people who are concerned, and I just think a degree of flexibility is perfectly reasonable. With flexible working policies, that's my understanding, I may be wrong, but you can't apply for that until you're in a job for a certain period of time, so
No,
that isn't something
It's
that
my
we
understanding
apply
you
for
can
now.
apply from day one.
the legislation
Well, we've
has
probably
just
been-
changed.
Oh,
That's
oh,
why,
they-
that's why.
That's why I'm
We
not
need a
today.
town clerk to investigate.
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
fixed term contract, and that may have different rules.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's that.
But you
So-
think not because it's changed.
So having,
Sorry, finally from me, if I may, we entrust the town clerk to manage all of the staff, to act as the employer, to be a good, caring employer, and to do the right thing. And the right thing with a new recruit, in my mind, is after the induction period, the new employee has a settling in period, and there should be a review. You know, good practice tells me there should be a review with that employee. How are things going, and have you settled in and everything? And that is, you know, what should be done. The ball is in the employee's court. If the employee makes a formal request, that is the law, because as I understand it, because we are asking the town clerk to act as our representative, as employer, and we must be a good employer, and a good employer complies with the law. So we must follow the law. And yes, we must kind of be practical, but you know, the wider thing is that all of the other staff, you know, we're entrusting you to manage them and to make sure that they work their contracted hours and all of those things. and we accept that people can go on holiday and people can go sick, and we need to have contingency arrangements in place. But I'm speaking really with a kind of a finance hat on, that all of this should come within the budget, and it should come at no additional cost to us as the council. And so I'm on the page of it's premature to give the clerk permission to allow flexible working. She can manage the situation on a day-to-day basis. Flexible working is a change of contract, and it should come to the council as employers to agree.
Councillor Green, that's not at all what I was requesting.
No.
That's not what I was requesting. I was just saying a little bit of wiggle room. Easter Sunday, something's happened. She's got family abroad. If someone was to come, for the weekend, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I understand. I'm comfortable with that. I'm
That's all.
comfortable
That's
with
all that was being requested.
So can I propose that at the 3-month stage, this is a 6-month contract, at the 3-month stage, we carry out a formal review of
Yeah, that's expected.
performance to date,
Yeah.
including
Conversation.
days of the week
Yeah.
worked, etc., etc. But in the interim, we give the town clerk the
Operation.
authority to run the service, to make sure the museum is open, and within that, if there is a need for flexibility in working hours or days, then that authority is given to the town clerk based on her running of the service.
I would second that.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
And
all-
to monitor the impact on the on
That's at the
us as the
3-month
employer,
stage, yeah.
to monitor the impact. So if we have to hire additional people to lock up or bring in,
No, we don't. No.
That's not
No.
what we're talking about at all.
No,
The town clerk needs to manage the volunteers and work around the opening and closing.
It is the caretakers who do
Yeah.
lock up. And the issue that happened on Easter Monday, or Easter Sunday, sorry, it was more about the individual didn't open the door properly. The caretakers had come in, but the issue that I'm explaining is that the volunteers didn't know who to go to. So the issue wasn't, the caretakers had done their job properly.
So that's a learning process which hopefully can be resolved. So that's my proposal.
Proposal, have a second?
Second, anyone second that?
I second it, yeah.
All those in favour?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right. Next item is training update. Report from the town clerk regarding the training needs of officers. This all seems fairly
Yeah.
straightforward, unless there's any comments.
Have to propose a receipt report.
I'll second that.
All those in favour? Thank you. Now we move on to a resolution to move into confidential session to resolve under the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960 and in accordance with Standing Order 7.3.2 to exclude the press and public on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted. And this is because the council has a duty under law, for example, as an employer to individuals whose personal data or other confidential information is required to be or likely to be discussed. And the next 3 items, one is about pay scales for a specific member of staff, so that's a personal confidential matter. And the second is the probation reviews for both the town clerk and the cleaner and caretaker. Again, these involve personal and confidential matters. So does anyone wish to propose that?
Yeah. Happy to propose.
Second, councillor Black, all those in favour? So that's agreed that we go into confidential session.